to have you with us in this edition of the Urban Debate. And in fact, viewers, you may have heard about this explosive report and investigation and an in-depth analysis that was done by CSC. And this report that they have come out with actually talks about our favorite honey brands. In times of a pandemic, in times of a COVID, where everybody is actually turning to ghar ke nuske, our own cultural solutions for boosting our immunity, including turmeric and honey, it seems that the honey that we may be getting in our markets may not be as trustworthy as we thought it was, even if it was the big brands. Now, let me tell you the key findings of this report that's come out. Finding number 1 says that the honey has been adulterated with sugar syrup. So while we may be thinking we're having something extremely healthy, there is an additional sugar syrup that's being added to a lot of these products out there available in the market. The study goes on to say 77%, over 3/4 of the samples that were actually tested were found mixed with sugar. Only 5 out of the 22 samples actually even passed the test. Samples from Dabur and Patanjali have failed this test. Jandu, Baidyanath samples also failed. And in a way that these sugar syrups are actually being created and designed is to ensure that they actually go undetected unless a deeper test and an investigation is actually done. That's what this report seems to suggest. It also says that these brands took aid from Chinese trade portals. Now, there has been a very vociferous response from several of these brands who have outright denied these findings. Jandu, for example, says that we ensure our products conform to all kinds of protocols and standards that have been laid by the government. We even follow the norms that have been laid by FSSAI. Now, that's the authority within the government, set up by the government, that actually looks at all your consumer packaged food products and the standards that they're really supposed to follow. Dabur also says, Dabur is a big brand when it comes to honey products, and says the motivated reports aimed at maligning our brand. Our honey is 100% pure and indigenous, collected naturally from Indian sources. There is no added sugar or adulterant. We don't import anything from China. We comply with all the parameters that have been mentioned by FSSAI. Even Patanjali is doing the same, and they're saying we're only using natural honey. Very, very stark and vociferous denial of what the report has found. So obviously, a further analysis has to be done. We are given to understand that's already happening. The government has decided to look into these detailed reports. The FSSAI has decided to look into these in this report that has come from the CSE. It doesn't stop here, because tonight we're going to have a conversation of how and if we actually need stringent norms, especially for our packaged foods. Many of those who believe that the loose food, grains to milk and everything else that you get, there may be a possibility of adulteration. Adulteration has been a biggest problem in our country since several decades now. It was a big story in 70s, 80s and even 90s. But in 2020, one would assume that at least when you go to your daily supermarket and you pick up your favorite packaged food brand, it's actually providing you what it claims it is. It's actually following all the norms which are laid down. Second, of course, the big aspect is, do we even have those kind of strict norms and checks? Who's really checking these products? You all will remember the big controversy that happened with Maggi a few years ago, when local state level FDA inspectors went about testing Maggi and the Maggi masala, and they found dangerous level of certain chemicals in it, which was not prescribed. It became a huge story. Maggi had to be taken off shelves for several months until that case got resolved. Now it's the time for the honey brands. But is there a larger concern in terms of our checks and balances and the norms which are in place? For now, dozens of products, honestly, if you sit back and make a list, and do that today, make a list of the products you buy from the supermarket which are packaged, pre-cooked or packaged in other sense, and branded, labeled. How many of those do you use on a daily basis? And imagine if there is a need to question the scrutiny for these brands. Those are the questions I'm going to ask our experts. Let's say good evening to Mahesh Zagare, former FDA Commissioner for Maharashtra, joining us this evening. Sonal Dhingra, Deputy Program Manager for Food Safety and Toxins at Center for Science and Environment. Mr. Milind Sarvate, founder and CEO of Increate Value Advisors LLP, has a huge amount of experience when it comes to fast-moving consumer goods. Amrish Kela, Managing Director for Scientech Technologies, and Dr. Shikha Sharma, founder for NutriHealth, also with us this evening. But I want to start off with Sonal Dhingra to understand what is it that this study really set out to do, and how did we find this problem? Essentially, if CSEs can find it, shouldn't the state FDAs be able to detect it as well, Sonal Dhingra?
Yes, I'm very excited to be here. And the first thing that because I would not say this study, we just started randomly. It evolved over time. And we only, started looking at the beekeepers that we heard from a few beekeepers that they are running out of livelihood, they are running out of business, they're not making as much money as they used to at some point of time. So we dug deeper and we wanted to check what's the reason. And most of them, they cited a reason. They said that the sugar syrup is being added in the honey, and which is why we are not getting the premium prices we used to get. So that's how we got into the sugar syrup investigation. We looked up what kind of syrup this is, and nobody had an idea what this is. So the first clue that we got was from FSSAI itself. It recently had released a direction for the importers, which said the importers, the documents of the importers would be scrutinized, and the syrups, the three syrups were listed: rice syrup, golden syrup, and invert sugar syrup. And the importers of these syrups the documents would be scrutinized. So that's how we got into investigating these three syrups. But surprisingly, we did not find any import data for the two of these syrups, rice syrup and golden syrup, because it lacks the harmonized system code, the HS code that the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry has prescribed for these the goods that are traded. So we thought this is the end of the story and we are not going to go any ahead, which is when we investigated what are the syrups. We investigated on the web what are the syrups that are usually used for honey adulteration. We saw the portals such as Alibaba or OKChem are selling these syrups openly. And they are saying that these pass the adulteration tests such as C3, C4, foreign oligosaccharides, SMR, and TMR, and most of which are listed in the Indian standards. So this had major impact on the study, and we further dug deeper on what is actually coming in India and under what name is it coming, which is when we tried to find out the name of the syrup under which this is coming. So we found a data which is not publicly available, and I'm under the agreement. I cannot. It's confidential that I cannot name the company that gave us that data. It's an EXIM agency which collects each shipment data, and we figured that it's coming under the name of fructose. Alibaba, OKChem also said that the honey is coming, the syrups are coming under the name of fructose or glucose. It uses names such as golden syrup fructose, F48, F55 syrup. And when we checked this data, we understood that most of it is coming from China. You would not believe 98% of it is coming from China, and it's coming in bulk. And when we track the sellers who are selling this in China, whether they are selling anything in India, we found that the name that we identified on the portal, they are also selling the same syrups in India. And we then further investigated whether we can procure these syrups from China. So we wrote to these sellers one of our investigators wrote to these sellers, if we as a company, if we pretend to be a company, can we procure these syrups? And we could. And you would not believe that we procured these syrups not under the head of syrup, but as a paint pigment emulsion. So a lot of it is coming from China to India, and it's being added in honey. And this is what we found, and this is how the study evolved over the last 4 months.
Okay, and you're saying these syrups that are being imported, being categorized as something else, and are being added in our honey, are they allowed as per the FSSAI norms? Are they put on the label of these products? Is this something that the companies are even aware of, or are they just getting it from third party without realizing what it is that they're getting?
We did not stop our investigation here. Of course, we tested these syrups. We added these syrups in the raw honey, and we also tested 13 honey brands, the major brands. And we found that only three of these brands passed on the Indian test and also the advanced test that we did in Germany. So we knew that something was amiss. This is not right that the companies could pass the C3, C4, foreign oligosaccharides, SMR tests, everything that's required in India, except for one brand that failed. All of them could pass the Indian standards, but only 3 of them could pass the advanced test. So we were sure that something was amiss, and this is how we finished the study. We don't know whether.
All right, do stay on with me, Sonal, as we go about this conversation. Yeah, go ahead, please.
What I'm saying is that we are connecting the dots. We know that the syrups are available. The syrups are being sold to Indian manufacturers. The syrups are also manufactured in India because we also procured one from Jaspur, Uttarakhand. So we know there's a syrup market that is very active. And we also know that the honey brands that are having high claims, they passed the Indian test and they failed the advanced test. So we know, we could connect the dots that the honey that we consume every day is also adulterated.
Okay, let me just very quickly also bring in Amrish Khela, Managing Director for Scientech Technology. Amrish, you have some amount of understanding of the field of beekeeping and honeys and organic honey. Now, would it be fair to say that while the consumers may not be aware of it, a large percentage of what's available out there in market as honey is actually synthetic or mixed and not really the pure unadulterated organic honey that we think we are having?
Yeah, hello. Honey is one of the most suspected items in any store, especially in an organic store. When you come in with a variety of honeys available, the first question comes to consumers' mind, is this pure? So there is definitely a lot of things behind the scene which customer knows possibly adulteration is happening. So much synthetic material is being put in, so much weight and artificial things are being added just to make honey more profitable. Coming from where I am from, supporting natural and organic farmers and beekeepers, I would really recommend that one should know the source of the honey, Everybody writes pure and natural or something. But as in organic, as much as you can source from your local and known sources, it is better. Because somewhere in the chain, there are chances that adulteration could take place. Even at the source, we know it's happening. Besides the factories which are packaging honeys, I've seen in North India, in the NCR region, the air is so polluted. There are industrial areas with dust and everything all around, and we have food industries branding honey and all that. I really don't know in the whole environment, which is so non-conducive to food. We have factories packaging honey and other things. So I would feel that the natural honey which comes from the forest is something which is safe, and provided you know the source of the honey. I mean, I would not really go by the labels because is happening in advertising. They try to say what they want to say. They try to hide what they don't want to say. So honey is considered amrit in India. It's great food here, food of the gods here. It's important here that the sanctity is maintained by really knowing, the source of the honey.
So what do these? And we're not going to get into specific brands or specific names, but you're saying that we need to focus on getting more the honey that comes straight from the farm or the forest. But how do we know that? How does any consumer know that, Amrish? Everybody claims to be, even in the responses that we've got to this report, all brands claim to be pure, 100% pure, indigenous, straight from the farm. So how do we know?
I can understand that dilemma of the consumers and everybody else, but ideally, if you can have somebody from the state or nearby areas where so you can get from Uttarakhand or Kashmir or some areas which are pristine. If honey comes from there, there are better chances that it is coming from a right source. Beekeepers are there all around the cities, and those are the people I would strongly suspect, not overall I would say, but commercial beekeeping compared to natural beekeeping, that's the difference.
Okay, now before we move on and I bring in our other experts, yes, I understood that. Before I go to our other two experts, I just want to very quickly bring in Dr. Shikha Sharma. Dr. Shikha Sharma, why is it important? Why are we talking about this today? Is because especially this year, when we've spoken so much about immunity boosting, when we've spoken so much about strengthening our body, keeping our bodies healthier, and a large part of this has to do with products like honey, we are finding out that almost all of the big ones and the trusted ones out there in the market may not be giving us the right kind of product. It obviously needs a lot more investigation basis what the CSC is saying. But Dr. Shikha Sharma, how detrimental can it be if there are sugar syrups, glucose or fructose, which is there in the honey that people may be consuming every day without knowing?
You're absolutely right. Now let's look at some of the things. Now, first thing is that if you see there is an obesity epidemic, and in fact, a lot of cancers are also connected to obesity. A lot of neurological disorders are connected to bad nutrition. Now, one of the biggest things which is happening in the modern world is the explosion of usage of sugar and things which are made from sugar. So that is one of the major causes of this explosion of obesity, cancers, and many other disorders. So the first thing is that people, when they're consuming honey for a health condition or for the health, they are not really bargaining to get sugar in return, which itself has been linked to many disorders, including cancers. The second thing I would say, and this is very critical, is that these syrups were made in such a way that they could pass the FSSAI test, which means that there is an element of they've been synthesized or they're synthetic, which is even more dangerous. I mean, one is sugar by itself is dangerous, and then when they're synthesized to bypass test, that means some chemical alteration could have been done. It is my assumption, which is even more deadly. Why? Because that means they're also bypassing the natural immune systems of the body. And what kind of danger and alteration they are doing, we'll only know later. Because if you see today how cancers, Alzheimer's, asthma, allergies, Crohn's disease, everything is going up every year. And obviously, a lot of it has to do with the kind of food which we are eating in terms of the packaged food. See, natural food, if you really know, doesn't cause all these problems. It doesn't cause cancers and stuff. It is the kind of packaged food and the chemicals and the pesticides. The third point I want to raise is, see, we know that farmers get a bad deal. And here it is very clear that the beekeepers who are actually for generations trained in beekeeping and who earn their living from this, they are getting a raw deal because their honey, they're not able to get the right price, and while the sugar syrups are being imported from China. So I think this is serious on many fronts, from the farmers front, from the health front, and also from the condition of pandemic. I mean, today we are fighting a pandemic and immunity. We always advise our doctors that, okay, take natural things like honey, take natural things like amla, tulsi. But if this is the situation, then honey would be harmful.
Yes, and to what extent then the consumer can really go and check these products or be careful. I mean, a lot of these brands are very, very trusted brands. They're trusted Indian homegrown brands. One assumes that the products that they use, the ingredients that they use, the processes that they use are the best in terms of our health. And if that doesn't happen, either we just start directly going to the farms, to the beekeepers, or we start buying the what is supposedly organic, labeled organic, extremely expensive products. What is the consumer's option? That becomes the problem, Mr. Milind Sarwate, because a lot of them just go with trust in the name of the brand.
Yes, I agree with you that the consumers are really caught unawares in this. They trust the brand. There are a couple of observations I have about what is the currently the news. There are two tests which many brands have failed: the TMR and the NMR tests. These tests have not been mandated by the FSSAI. Now, if these tests are relevant and they are useful to determining the quality of honey, I personally feel that the FSSAI should have incorporated these tests in their standard kit. In that case, all the companies would have been mandated. It would have been mandatory for the companies to make their products pass this test. Somehow that has not been done, and therefore, maybe the companies are also losing an opportunity to establish their brand in a superior way. A couple of companies, I think three companies, have passed these tests also, and in a personal way, I'm happy that the company with which I worked for long, which is Marico, which has passed this test, but all the companies have not. Therefore, one reason of the dichotomy, I would say, is that the FSSAI should have a mechanism by which its tests are always kept current and relevant and complete. That is one thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that as a habit, consumers must try and figure out whatever is printed on the package. They must make a habit of reading it at least once before they consume. Honey is a relatively simpler product, but there are many other food products where the FSSAI or the Food Administration has been very progressive and has mandated a lot of stuff to be printed on the pack. But I believe that most consumers do not read what is written on the pack. There are detailed instructions given, and our Food Administration has been very progressive in many areas. So the second thing I would say is that companies should also inculcate this habit amongst the consumers of reading what is written on the pack. And lastly, I would say that these findings, they dent a lot of brand equity for most companies. And although many of them would rightly deny that these reports are true, I feel that they need to sit up and take notice, especially in natural products. I think they're reasserting the brand equity through some other reinforcing mechanism. It's very critical. I think finally consumers are not an informed lot. It is understood that they don't have a laboratory at home.
Yes, I'll that's another point that I want to talk about consumer awareness and just debate a lot more on that. But you raised a very valid point, which is that even if you look at the statements that have come out by most of the companies, whether it's Patanjali or Dabur or Zandu or Baidyanath, what they seem to be saying is we follow all the norms. We follow all the norms. We follow all the norms. But clearly the report itself says that the tests that they have conducted and what they found are not even there prescribed in the norms. That doesn't mean that it makes the product any healthier. That doesn't mean that the product cannot be unhealthy. Clearly, Mr. Mahesh Zagade, there seems to be a case here for us to even upgrade and update our norms about safety and health, what is healthy and what isn't healthy.
See, as Mr. Sarwate has said, that there is definitely a case for upgradation of the norms and standards and all that. But that could be a partial truth. The real truth is that when the food standards and additives regulations came in 2011, they prescribed for honey that what is honey? Honey is a natural product prepared, manufactured, or made by honey is a natural product. So it is by law, it has to be natural product. Second is about like it has given some like 65% not 65% not reducing sugars, and these norms are there. And to that extent, then the manufacturers and these brands are right. But natural thing that doesn't fit into this thing. Now, whether the law is mandatory for natural, yes. There are other set of rules there that is called as Schedule 4. There they have to apportion, or they have to tell the authorities like Food Safety Authority, Standards Authority, FSSAI, and Food Safety Commissioners of the states that this is how we have collected honey from these farmers, or these people have collected. This is how we have processed, and this is how it has gone. For that, they have to also submit the annual returns to the FSSAI and the Food Safety Commissioners. And those annual returns are just like income tax returns. These authorities, they have to check and analyze those results and find that whether these honey, the products have come actually from the natural honeybee people, or it has come from some syrup. So it is not that the regulations cannot be implemented, or it's not there. It is there. But we take a very easy route that we need to have further like technological things like NMR, CNMR, or C3 and C4, and we get entangled into this jungle, and the consumer ultimately is the sufferer. My point is that whatever the norms are there, whatever the regulations are there, they should be implemented. Unfortunately, we are just discussing about honey, but this is like to have a sense of proportion priorities. Honey is, I don't know how many people are consuming honey in this country percentage wise, but we consume 100% like vegetables, fruits, then milk and oil. Now, there could be a case for even oil also, that oil manufacturers could be using some kind of adulterants which may not be which labs may not be able to even test also. And I for sure know that there are certain adulterants which cannot be like found out in the labs also. So it is not the like what tests you have to carry out. It is the, and therefore why this new law that came in 2006, Food Safety and Standards Act, replace earlier old law of food adulteration law, prevention of production law. It's only for that it has to know that how this product has started from raw material to the finished product, and that chain has to be told by the manufacturers or the traders to the FSSAI, and they have to find it out whether it has been followed or not. So if it is done, probably then I think all such instances would get tapering off. But unfortunately, in this country,
but Mr. Jagare, if I can ask you this, I am looking at some statistics, and I agree with you. I wanted to have a larger conversation about the quality of the food products, that we are consuming on a daily basis, the amount of adulteration that may be happening. I am looking at some data from 2018-2019. 21,363 cases, criminal cases were filed for adulteration. 700 convictions were reported. Penalties were imposed in 12,700 cases. If even in the preceding year, before that, there were over 15,000 cases that were filed. Over 5,100 convictions were reported. Now, are these numbers still very small? Are we still failing somewhere? Where is the gap between what we should be doing and what is being done right now?
Tanvi have raised a very valid question, but let me tell you on record that this is misleading the country and misleading the even media also. Like we are just throwing the numbers like these many FIRs, these many cases, and these many convictions. No, intention of the new law is that conviction happens after the event, that somebody has consumed the food and then somebody is getting punished. But by the time the damage has made, the new law intends that such things should not happen. And for that, there are clear-cut provisions, and those provisions are not getting implemented. The bureaucracy is very complacent about this. In fact, they are following the old regime of like testing and then taking action and convictions, all that. That is not done. And therefore, the country should know that we need to have we should have lesser and lesser number of such convictions and FIRs, because there should not be any occasion. And for that, definite rules, regulations, and provisions of the law are there. We should enforce those laws so that such instances do not happen. And that was the clear-cut deviation from before 2006 and after 2006. Of course, this law came into in existence. It became operational in 2011. But after that, nobody has bothered about this thing. It is just the law is remaining in the book, and we are again following up the raids and the testing and the conviction and all that. I think unless and until we follow the route that is mentioned in the law, that such instances should not happen, and mention their clear cut. And secondly, and this is very important, is there any instance where any food safety commissioner or any authority or food safety authority, they have been penalized or they have been charged that they have not implemented it properly? No, it has not been done. So unless and until they are forced to implement this is going to go again and again. This is going to happen, and I don't think there would be any end to this.
Well, all the efforts that people are taking right now to lead a healthier life, to lead a life with safer food products, where is that going to go if you don't know what it is out there in the market? And of course, when I say packaged food, I'm not just limiting it to your pre-cooked noodles, and snacks that you get, where any which is there's a big question mark on how healthy they are, but even others. For example, honey in this case. Mr. Milind Sarwate, you wanted to make a point before I go back to Sonal?
Yes, I wanted to make a point that Mr. Jagde is absolutely right that the administration of these regulations is critical. And if you analyze these number of cases reported also state-wise, you will find that some states have been more active than others. And having come from the industry, I know that some states are overactive and some states are underactive. Although this law is a national law, we need to have more uniformity in administration of this law.
Okay, you're saying there needs to be more uniformity in the administration of this law, but will that really lead to the companies following the law? And in this case, as we've discovered, the law may be something else. They find ways around it and evade the law then.
Possible. But I'm saying at least if the fear of non-compliance of law is uniform all across the country, you will be better off. That's what I'm saying. And I think there has to be a respect to the administering authority if you find that they are well informed and they are proactive. Actually, Mr. Jagde made a very important point that the new law is about standards. It is not a law about penalizing people. It aims at making the standards better, and therefore safer products will come for the consumers. I think the ethos of the law is about standardizing and therefore putting more responsibility on the manufacturer. That ethos, I think, is getting lost somewhere.
And there is one more point that I want to highlight. Again, I will take the example of honey, but imagine if this is happening in several other food products or categories, which is that clearly there was some sense or some amount of information available even with FSSAI that despite our norms and our standards and the tests that we've prescribed, the manufacturers are finding their way around it and still managing to adulterate, mix it with different products to make it more affordable for them, more profitable for them, which is why, Sonal, I'm given to understand that the FSSAI actually changed the norms for honey, amended those norms about the quality standards 2 times in the recent past. And the intention both of those times were actually to try and plug in these loopholes that were being used and misused. So clearly there is a constant attempt by some of the manufacturers to find easier ways out, and our government trying to play catch up with that.
Before I talk about the current situation, I would like to say that India has one of the most robust standards for honey. No other country has prescribed such standards. If you be it EU, be it US, be it New Zealand, Australia, because all of them say that honey is a natural product. Anything adulterated in honey, it's not honey. If anything is added in honey, it's not honey. But India has prescribed the standards. And we have come a long way from 2017 to 20. But recently in 2020, in 2017, there were all these parameters were there. SMR was there, TMR was there, foreign oligosaccharides were there. But in October 2019, all three of them were removed from the standards, and two of them were reinstated in 2020. However, TMR has not been reinstated yet. And there was no explanation whatsoever that why is TMR not part of the standards anymore. Today, FSSAI has mentioned in its press release, which they did after our study, it says that TMR is not required because SMR, which is a more specific marker for rice syrup, is there, and we do not need TMR. But clearly, our study shows that there are samples that have cleared SMR but have still failed TMR. So I think it's important to understand that these tests are complementary in nature. They have to be conducted, they have to be undertaken together, and the nature of the sugars that are added in honey, it's very complicated, and to understand it in a better way, it's important to have complementary testing, which is why we did a huge spectrum of these tests ranging from C4 to NMR. And it's very important that we keep ourselves updated, because these syrup manufacturers will definitely find ways to bypass the tests. Even if we come up with a new advanced technology, say NMR today, I'm sure there'll be a syrup to bypass NMR very soon after we introduce NMR. So it's important to keep ourselves updated.
Correct. So exactly the point that I was making is it is important for even the authorities to keep up and constantly be on watch to say what is happening out there, what's changed now, what are the other ways that the manufacturers have found, and when they do catch somebody, they need to be penalized very, very strictly, so that there is a fear even in the minds of our manufacturers, which is what some of our other panelists were suggesting. Now, for example, look at what's happening when it just comes to the fast-paced changing standards for honey. Obviously, because way too many attempts are being made to really bypass the system or cheat the system. It's actually just cheating the system and cheating you, the consumer. In 2010, CSC lab found antibiotic residues in honey. In 2014, FSSAI amended the standards to include antibiotic residue limits. And they came out with an entire set of regulations. Then in 2017, they drafted another set of standards for honey, including tests to detect the cane and rice sugar, which is the C3 and C4. Some of those tests were conducted this time by CSC. 2018, FSSAI notified standards with some more changes. Then they reversed the decision on test key parameters, which is what Sonal was pointing out. Essentially, there are tests out there, Sonal, in the market that can help us detect these artificial syrups that are being added. But we are not asking the manufacturers, or we are not asking the authorities to use these tests. These are not mandatory tests in our country, isn't it?
See, I would say even if they can't put it in the standards, it's very important for FSSAI to be vigilant.
Yeah.
They can at least do random checks and random tests, visiting the sites of these manufacturers, do a random check whether there's availability of any syrup, pick up the samples from the market like we did, and, just test honey randomly and make the results public like we did. It ensures transparency to the consumer. It gives a consumer some kind of confidence that what I'm consuming today is adding to my health and it's not detrimental to my health, especially in things, in times like this pandemic.
So let me look at some of these, components that are there, which is rice syrup, with one important thing that has emerged, golden syrup, invert sugar syrup. Now, if I can go back to Dr. Shikha Sharma, and Dr. Shikha Sharma, it boils down to the same thing. I know, ideally, in an ideal environment, people should be avoiding a lot of these packaged products, but it's just how our lifestyles have become now. So then what does one do? About consumer awareness, let's talk about us as a consumer. How do we protect ourselves from dangers like these out there?
See, I think what is important is that one has to be careful about what kind of products one is consuming, because one is that these these brands themselves have let down their consumers. The second is that many times there is also a situation where there is repackaging using the same bottles of another brand, and those things are also rampant in our country, where a branded bottle is used to repackage a low quality product. So I think as a consumer, what we need to do is we have to fundamentally try to be careful and use only better quality brands. Of late, we have known that some of these big brands have fallen short on many other products also. And if you really talk to many Ayurvedic doctors, they don't use the products from these companies. The second thing I would say is absolutely that to be alert. Like, for example, there are tests there which you can do at home. Like, for example, the flame test. You try to, because honey is inflammable, it burns. Similarly, mixing with water. That if you try to mix honey with water, it doesn't dissolve, whereas a sugar, adulterated sugar-laced honey would dissolve more easily. So I think it's important to do some of these basic tests, and I think FSSAI also has some adulteration kit which is available. So basic tests can be done at home to figure out that whether this is a better quality. But here I would like to make a statement also. See, brand is basically a relationship of trust. And when we say we are buying from a brand, we are fundamentally saying that as consumers we are not knowledgeable enough about the intricacies of a food, and it's a relationship of a trust, and that's what brand stands for. And I think that's where somewhere most of these brands have to do a relook, and do they need to be more stringent in their own quality standards. They cannot say that we passed FSSAI, that's not enough. They have to, the relationship is with the consumer, and that's where I think they need to take a stringent test for themselves, whether they test it from better laboratories or whatever. But it's a different relationship.
Can I say something, Tanvi?
Yes, you need to be honest to your customer. You need to be honest and honorable. Mr. Sarvate, I'm really sorry, but I'm completely out of time. So, in fact, I will have to thank all of our panelists for joining us. Maybe we have a larger conversation about accountability and consumer awareness another day. But thank you so much to all our panelists for joining us. The responsibility of our brands, and the brands become what they are because people buy those products. People buy into their story. People put their trust in these brands. People use these products to feed the elderly, to feed their children, their family. And so there's a lot of trust involved. And so it's not just the government or the FSSAI that the brands, the food brands are accountable to. They're accountable to you and me. It's not just enough for them to say we are following the norms laid down by the government or the regulatory authority in this specific case. They're accountable to you and me. They promise you and me good food, safe food, quality food, healthy food. And that's what they have to deliver. If they know that what they are using in their products to cut costs, to mass produce, is compromising that promise to us, then they are cheating us. And for that, they should be held responsible. It doesn't matter what's there in black and white. If you are cheating your customer and lying to them about the healthy standards that you're selling, then you should be held responsible for that. Thank you so much for joining us.